Welcome to the podcast of Data and Analytics in Business. We will learn from the leading industry experts using data and analytics to solve the problems and create values in practice. We will also learn where the industry is heading to and how data and analytics will shape the industry in the future. Most importantly, how they are preparing their business for digital transformation and disruption in the future. I'm your host, Jason Tan, and thank you for listening.
In this episode, we have got Kshira Saagar. Kshira is the Chief Data Officer at Latitude Financial Services, or I call it LFS. Now, LFS is one of the Australia's biggest non-bank lender, digital payment and finance company with over 2.7 million customers across Australia and New Zealand. At Latitude LFS, Kshira is currently working on enabling the enterprise to make faster and smarter data-driven decisions. We started the conversation talking a little bit of the history of the LFS and how it has been existing and helping Australian customers since a very long time ago. And in fact, many of the customer who actually perhaps been the customer of LFS for some time, and they probably don't even know about it. For example, when you are buying products at the Harvey Norman with those 60-month interest-free, you perhaps have been a customer of LFS. I also asked Kshira that without the physical footprint like the traditional bank, how the company has grown from strength to strength to develop such a loyal customer base. And equally, being digital, online, and call center only without any physical branch, I asked Kshira how and if that make LFS more data-driven and agile. Kshira explained to me they face the similar challenges like other institutions, and their approach in solving some of these legacy problems, it attributes a lot to the senior leadership and the very, very good decision-making process that they have got in place. Subsequently, I dive in and ask Kshira about the works that he's currently putting in to build the data and analytic capability at the LFS. And subsequently, I also asked him to share with us more of his view and also how one organization will be able to support the Selfservices. This is where Kshira shared his framework called TEA, which basically cover three things. Number one, T for tools, E for education, A for access. He went on also to further elaborate about the Selfservice. Not only is covering about the dashboard, but it also should cover the data engineering and also this data discovery for the entire of the organization. At the same time, Kshira shared some really practical tips and strategy in terms of building the data literacy and have a strong penetration throughout the organization. With the glimpse of understanding how Kshira is building the data and analytic capability for the organization, I asked his view and experience on how to develop the similar capability for a new and completely new product. Completely new and a different product, and which is Latitude Pay. Latitude Pay is basically buy now, pay later financial product. And I asked his view for all the considerations such as risk management perspective, how to avoid data bias, and what are the approach they take and the framework that they use when it comes to building a brand new product for the capability. Finally, I asked Kshira how one should approach the topic of personalization versus the data ethic, and subsequently what companies should be doing to help the customer understanding how the organization are protecting their data privacy. If you are a senior manager or executive leader and you have always wanting to know and find out why you should have the need of centralize the data and analytic capability and equally building a centralized team to create the chief data office this is really the episode for you, as Kshira has got a lot of experience and sharing many useful and practical tips in this aspect. If you are data and analytic practitioner, and when you are told to build the data and analytic capability for a brand new product without any framework or playbook to follow, you would also want to hear what Kshira has got to say in this very subject. If you have any question for me or Kshira, make sure you connect to Kshira on LinkedIn or send us any question either by email, by LinkedIn message, or the voice message on the app. We'll make sure to answer all the questions that you have. If you enjoy more episodes like this and you want to hear more with the data leaders like Kshira, make sure you click the subscribe button on the podcast platform or follow us on LinkedIn. I'm your host, Jason Ten. Thank you for listening. Hello, Kshira. I'm so excited to have you here for the Analytics Show podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. And thank you so much for getting my name right. That's very beautiful. Thanks for that.
I think name is very important. I always want to make sure that I get it right. I still do to get it wrong from time to time, but I'm glad I got it.
That's all right.
Now, let's get things started, right? I found some really cool and beautiful comics on your website on various practical scenarios. And it kind of like put a smile on my face because those are the things that we really face while working with data analytics in a professional setting. My question for you is, what is your favorite among all?
So I don't know if you've seen all of them. So it's called statistical. So the first thing I need to call out is it's not just me, my wife and I do it together. So my wife also works for the data science space. So both of us, when we share our stories about how people look at what we do, it's funny. And so it was her idea and then we tried to contribute. So my favorite one is the one that happened to me where I built a forecasting algorithm and then we deployed it and then it had an 87% accuracy. And then the person who was selling the algorithm, I used to work for a product consulting company. He's like, it's just 87. Can it not be 96% or 97%? I'm like, no, so you cannot get. And then it's like, no, can we not just call it? It's 97. So for us, it was amazing. It was 87. And so that disparity in what accuracy means and how people view it, it's very interesting. So
I thought 87% is pretty good already. So I can imagine. In that case, when you face such a similar situation again, especially maybe it can be in different setting, whether when you are working for a consulting company or a large corporation, how do you face and overcome such a communication challenge? What is the strategy then?
I think it's the first thing is when you start facing this, you typically tend to think, how can they feel like that, right? And it's funny. But then the more and more you realize that people are being pragmatic, right? For them, accuracy 100% is good. So anything that's below 90% is not. That's all they know. They don't know that in the machine learning world, 87% is great. And so they just don't know that. So I think it's important to then. So for example, in this context, it's about how do you give them the right baseline and then show them. So we show them if somebody had done it manually, they would get 60%, but we can get 80. For them, then 80 seems much higher. So it's the similar retail anchor effect. So instead of just saying it's 87% accurate, we say if somebody did it was 60, we did it, it's 87. They're like, yep, this is something I want to sell. So I think it's just trying to understand and get people to look at it from a more pragmatic real world thing. And that's a skill that you pick up along the way, right? As in more and more you work in the data space. I think that's what's missing because people feel like there's definitely a disconnect between people who do the data stuff and the people who use the decisions from the data. And that disconnect is because we don't translate data into English, and that needs to be done much more and much faster.
Pragmatic is the word that I pick up there, and I really love your view about it. I think being pragmatic is so important in many aspects of our life. Now, please share with us about your role of being the first CDO of Latitude Financial Services, and also perhaps share a little bit about the LFS. I'm just going to short form it for this conversation. And for those of our listeners who may not be familiar with the organization.
So LFS stands for Latitude Financial Services. So for those of you who might not have heard of Latitude Financial, it's the largest non-banking financial services in Australia and New Zealand. So also the big four banks, this is the largest non-bank bank, if you want to think about it that way. So where have you seen LFS? I think it's very important to understand. every time you go to Harvey Norman or to an Apple or to a Samsung or to a JB Hi-Fi, and you get one of those 60 months interest-free program, that's a Latitude Financial program. So we underwrite it. Everyone's been there. So we've been underwriting it for 20 plus years, and that's Latitude. That's one big market. The other one famous on that Latitude is known for is the GEM Visa card and the Go Mastercard. So that's Latitude. And in the olden days, maybe 5-7 years ago, the Kohl's Mastercard was also a Latitude card. It used to be a Latitude card. And so what Latitude does is underwrites a lot of these credit cards, it underwrites a lot of these sales finance. And also it's the second largest personal loan, unsecured personal loan lender in Australia and New Zealand. So that's who we are. That's what Latitude is. And interestingly enough, Latitude's been around. It's not a new company. It's a new brand, but the company's been around from 1925 in the name of AGC, Australian Guarantor Corporation. So it's been a financial company since 1925 in different hands, different formats. Then it became GE Capital in 1990s, and then now it's become Latitude in 2015. So that's been the journey of this business. And where I come in this journey and where the CDO office comes in, I think in different formats, there's never been a CDO office, but there's been different enterprise information management offices, different people doing data in different ways. But I think after the group was bought and it got rebranded as Latitude, there's always been a focus on unifying data. That was never been the priority. So once there was a massive digital transformation and modernization that went through, when that was set in stone and then we had a good foundation, then the leadership made a decision to bring in a chief data office to then make use of the digital transformation and modernization. So that's where we come and sit in. So the CDO office, the chief data office, is a combination of two things. We both build data capabilities, like typically that happens in CDO spaces, be it data management, data governance, data cataloging, building the data platforms, all of that stuff. But we also have teams that deliver value. We have the analytics teams, the data science teams, the BI teams. So it's a mixture of both, the best of both worlds. And that's what the chief data office is doing right now. So we help the marketing teams, the campaign teams, the operational teams, the credit risk teams. So we support all of these teams with data and data platforms. So that's what we're trying to do right now at Latitude.
Great. Actually, I've been a customer since the days of GE. I remember that one of the cards that GE Capital, under the brand of the GE, was really popular is the 38 degrees, because that's the card where there is no foreign conversion fee. So it was really popular. And I think it's still one of the very, very popular cards by many of the Australian here. My question then for you is, since the transition from GE into LFS, now, even though it doesn't have the footprint like the traditional bank, the company have grown from strength to strength. In your own view, what contribute to this growth?
I think it has the right leadership. So the right management and the right leadership. So that's one that definitely is needed. Two is the products have its own strengths. Like I mentioned, a lot of products have good recall and a good value. So 28 degrees, GEM Visa, Go Mastercard, they have really good reputation and good value. And the third thing is they've made a conscious decision to modernize the business much ahead of the banks and other financial institutions. So a lot of good investments gone in it. And so what you will start seeing over the next coming years is you, instead of seeing it as separate products, you'll see it as one financial product that will customize for your needs and customize for who you are. And so because they have that vision and visibility, that's helping the business grow despite the tough times and despite what's happening right now.
I suppose on the other token of this is that has being digital first make it easier for you and LFS to be more data-driven and agile, or you would still face some of those challenges that in the back office like other institutions, especially with the legacy system?
So we are definitely not digital first yet. We are trying to become digital first. We are still mostly one of those legacy banks and have a lot of legacy systems. So there's an interesting set of worlds, right? There's a lot of new products that we have are completely digital first, but there are a lot of older products like our personal loans and lending and others are still in the older system. So what's happening is a process of modernizing them and trying to bring them to the digital world. But still there are elements where we need to find the strike balance. So it's quite hard. So when you're trying to build a capability or technology in the new world, it's much easier. Just go deploy something, it's done. But you're trying to build for the old world, you need to find a way where it still works for that world, because that's where a lot of our customers are still. And so it's definitely a delicate balance that we're trying to do and trying to understand how do we build a bridge rather than just saying all of that's scrap, just throw it away and then build something new. We're just trying to make sure we build a bridge from the old to the new so that there is a seamless transition whenever the transition happens.
I think the other thing that I also like about the approach that you guys are taking, as described by your CEO, I think you guys are recently just bought a company, I think it's called Simple. So I think the view is that instead of spending money on building the massive IT project from the ground up, it looks like a different approach is more about perhaps buying the newer and modern platform and then bring into the play and offer that. That is, I think, is really smart thing to do.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, it's all credit to the leadership, right? I think they have the vision, they know what's happening. The leadership right now at Latitude has the experience and expertise of running some of the largest businesses. So they're trying to understand what the market needs. And like you rightly mentioned, the call that they made right now is where it'll help us really grow from strength to strength.
Good stuff. Now, I'm a big advocate of self-services, especially the self-services of the data. And whilst you are building the data capability and foundation, what role do you think the CDO office play, and how does the team develop the data literacy and usage across the whole of the enterprise?
That's a good question, right? So you shouldn't call it, it's not just, typically when people say self-service, immediately think about dashboards. They're like, I'm going to build more dashboards. So for me, that's not self-service. That's one version of self-service, right? So there are three things, right? That's not just self-service. So self-service means self-serving insights, which is dashboards. Self-service means self-serving, the ability to bring your own data and do whatever you want with it, which is data engineering as a service. And self-service meaning being able to discover data on your own using something like a data catalog or Google Maps for data. So that's data discovery as self-service. So there are multiple self-services. So those are different things. So that's the first thing I think about. And when it comes to doing self-service, we typically have a framework that I used in the past successfully, and that works. I call it the data T. So you sit down and have tea with people. So TEAT. So it acronymizes to tools, education, and awareness, right? Sorry, access. Tools, education, and access. So what I mean by tools, education, and access is, yes, number one is to build the self-service tools, be it the BI platform, be it the data engineering platform, be it the data catalog platform. So you have to build the tools, yes, or you have to buy the tools. That's one. But a lot of times what people do is they build an amazing self-serve BI platform and nobody uses them. And they say, we spent millions of dollars on them. That's because then E doesn't happen, which is education on how to use them. So education is, you can only do education if you have the tools. So in that whole chicken and egg problem, the tools come first, then you do more education of the enterprise and the business and say, hey, this tool you could use for this particular use case. This is what you do today. You can do this better using this tool. So then the adoption is going to be good. And then the most important part, especially in a company that's listed or a financial service company, is access. You can't just open up all the tools to all the people. But on the contrary, you can't just shut down all the tools to all the people. So you need to find out a smart way to give access to all the right people to the right job. So if you're giving access to dashboards, people should be able to see only their team's stuff and their performance and not the whole business. Or they should not be able to see financial metrics. So, but still they should be able to see everything. So what people end up doing is they don't give anyone access to dashboards at all because it has like 5 key metrics. Instead of that, how do you find a smart way to give access to dashboards? They don't give anybody access to bring data at all because they think people don't know how to bring data. So they might mess it up. How do you make sure you give the right guardrail so people can bring whatever, even a CSV file, and do whatever they want with it? So that's the right access. And so once you give that access, then people are going to use the tools more. They will want more education, which means you'll have to give better access, then more tools, more education, more access. So it's that flywheel is what will make data self-service and data literacy possible. So instead of it being separate initiatives where one team builds data self-service and the other team does data literacy, the CDO team is helping build the right tools, give the right education, give the right access. And then it's that flywheel of people then finding out how to use it and continuously keep using it.
On the note of the access and where you talk about the self-service in terms of the insight, data engineering and discovery, I want to dwell a little bit deeper about the access and the data engineering. I was really intrigued and I was really excited when you were talking about how you will want to allow people to be able to bring in the data so that they can do whatever things that they want that is necessary, right? The reason why I'm saying that, and I want to highlight that, is because in many, many places is that often that is tightly controlled effectively to the extent that making a request, etc., to bring in new data would probably take 6 to 12 months alone just to make that request. In your view or your experience, what is the right way to balance it? I suppose I can understand why most of the organizations do it this way, just to make sure that the security, the cybersecurity, all those sort of stuff are in play. But I suppose my follow-up question for you is, how do you balance it, especially in a regulated industry like yours, where finance is so important?
Yeah. So one thing is you need to have a right data governance framework, data guardrails, right? So what the team's done is they've gone away and thought about how do you grade data. There's gold quality data, silver quality data, bronze, iron, and then something even worse than that, right? So there are 4 to 5 levels of data. So if the data engineering team that is responsible for bringing data brings the data in, they'll build all the checks and balances, they'll build the pipelines. That's gold quality data because they have the monitoring in it. If the data engineering team is not bringing it, but a system engineering team is bringing that data through a Kafka pipeline, for example, or a self-service pipeline, that's silver quality data because they are pushing the data by themselves, but nobody's monitoring it. But it's still data coming fresh from the source systems directly. So that's silver. But if somebody else is bringing data, people are uploading a CSV file to an S3 bucket or putting it somewhere so they can still see it because we have a data lake, then that will be bronze or iron or whatever it is, right? So that way, if it's classified and anybody who builds a report on top of it, in the dashboards that we build or in the places that shows up or in the data catalog, it will call out that those data assets are bronze or iron quality, which means any decision you make of it is that nobody will stand by it. If you're still happy to make the decision, you should go ahead and make it, but you should know, you should be aware of how it's made. So think of it as the label behind the products when you buy in Kohl's or Woolies, right? If you go to buy a product and the product says it's a 5-star product and that's all that, you would buy it. But if it says, I don't know how I source these items, but if you still want to buy it because it's like 10 times cheaper, it's your call and your risk. But we won't say, no, you won't sell those things. We'll sell those things as long as it meets some minimum criteria. But then people can make a decision on how to buy it. The reason we have that kind of flexibility is because what I've seen is sometimes people have really good intent. They don't have the skills, which basically, like you said, bottlenecks from bringing, sometimes it's not about continuously bringing data. It's just about bringing data once a month, for example, or once every quarter. That's all they need to do. And they need to show a report or a dashboard. And they don't want to spend weeks and weeks doing it. If they can bring it to a data lake, they can build a simple dashboard in a matter of days. And then if that is the case, you should definitely support that use case too. Just need to call out that data is being brought by someone themselves, and therefore it has a chance of having an error. So as long as you have the ability to show credibility of the data source through a data governance or a data grading, then it should alleviate the problem of, even in a regulated enterprise, of people bringing their own data, because every key financial decision or operational decision will be made of gold quality data. All the other tactical decisions or small scale decisions or campaign decisions can be made of silver or bronze or iron data. And that's, if you have that kind of an understanding and agreement across the business, everyone wins. Everyone can bring their own data in. And then there's also pathway, just like pathway to citizenship, there's a pathway for the data to become a gold quality data. So a lot of people are using the iron quality or bronze data. They said, we really want to make this gold quality. And at least we have a roadmap to make that gold quality. So it's just like that. So we try to think about it that.
I love how you're categorizing it. I remember when I was doing the research, I came across this framework that you have on your website. I believe it's called something data map. This categorizing and allowing people to do the self-service in terms of the insight, data engineering and discovery. Is that something that they can find out more in details in this framework that you have got on your own website?
I've actually been writing that and I've stopped. I need to start publishing. I still have an open article that I need to publish. But yes, I'm going to write more about that, about how to do that, how we grade it, what happens, where does it fit in. We've even come up with a data maturity assessment for financial services and also generally across the enterprise. So I'll probably be sharing more of that. So, and I'll let you know once I do that.
Sure. I think there are a lot of great stuff in there. I'll make sure to share the website with the listener. Now, my next question for you is, what are some of the practical tips that you can share for other business leaders who want to achieve the same goal of the complete data literacy penetration throughout the stuff? I think there is this misconception that data literacy is only necessary or required for the people who do data engineering, the people who do analytics, right? Do you agree with that, or what is your view on that? And what is your suggestion of this?
So I come from a school of thought where everyone in the company has to use data to make better decisions. That's how, and everyone needs to know that. So the analogy I often give is knowing data is like knowing how to use a computer. Nobody says, oh, you don't need to use a computer anymore. You don't do computer work. That's not the case. We all use computers to check mail, to send email, whatever it is. We use computers, right? And that's how data is. If the right data is available, everyone, it could be a forklift operator, it could be somebody who's delivering parcels, it could be somebody who's managing people, it could be somebody who's making multi-million-dollar marketing relations. Everyone needs to use data to do something better. So my tip often it's called this, and it's interesting if somebody put it to me once, is you need to come from the school of 2 ears and 1 mouth when you try to do data literacy. What do I mean by 2 ears and 1 mouth? Is you need to listen more and talk less. A lot of times when we do data literacy, people will talk a lot about, they build something, they have a dashboard, a tool, they have like Power BI or Tableau or whatever it is. And then they just say, throw Power BI courses at them, say, learn Power BI, you'll become data. That's not how data literacy works, or Tableau courses. That's not how it works, right? When you say data literacy, you go and talk to the people first, understand what their problems are. So let's take the example of salespeople, Salesforce on the ground, people on the Salesforce who go and talk to, say, merchants or stores or who partners. Their daily challenge, understand their daily challenge. Their daily challenges are, who do I talk to? How soon should I talk to them? What do I do if that person is not available or if I don't meet my targets? Then work back and say, I've built a dashboard that will help you do that. Why don't you use this report and these metrics because you can do this better and faster? Then they will they'll say, yes, I want to use more data. Instead of that, if you build a dashboard and say, use Power BI and that's all, and that's not going to work. So if you work backwards, like I keep saying, understand their problems, then tie it to the data we have. Understand the problem, tie it back to the data we have. People will love the data. And I've seen that happen in my past lives where we built custom visualizations or custom algorithms or whatever, even for operational teams. And then people will find it more useful. And that's the only tip I would typically give people when they're trying to do data.
I think that is a really good analogy of the 2 years and 1 mouth. And also what you described there is what I call also inside out. So the data team and the analytic team have to go and approach the business team and encourage them to understand the problem and equally encourage them to be more data driven. What do you think we can do in creating this, what I call outside in approach, where the business team, especially the frontline and the senior manager of the frontline people, taking more proactive approach and come and speak with the CDO and say, how can we be more data driven? How can we make better decisions and use the data? This is what the challenge that we have. What do you think and how can we solve this problem?
Yeah. So I think the way I approach this problem is I first go and talk to them because my strong belief is people don't know what they don't know, right? So if you just tell them to be data driven, it doesn't mean anything. So let's pick an operation supervisor, somebody who supervises people at the warehouse. Sit down, go talk to them and give them all the examples of something you've done before, you've read before. We can do this, we can do that, we can do that, and throw like ideas at them in their team leadership meeting or wherever it is. One of them will definitely land and they'll say, let's do this as a use case because this is the biggest challenge we have, our teams have. Then build for it, deliver it, and then see that credibility come in, and then automatically people will start bringing use cases and case studies. But the other way around, where you build a technology and then say, I have a technology, what can I do? That's like building a solution, then finding a problem to solve. I look at it the other way, where awareness on what all can be done. And that comes from, say, things like listening to podcasts like yours, where other people share challenges where people are doing, reading magazines where people are talking about things that they've done for their own teams, their own companies, and showing those examples. Hey, did you know we can? The reason why consulting companies work so well is because that's what they do. They call them use cases or case studies. And the moment you see a case study or a use case and you see, this is exactly what I want. I didn't know that we could do this. Can we do this? That needs to happen. Once that happens, then that whole awareness, engagement happens. And then it's a really good journey to be on after that.
Good stuff. Now, 80-20% rule is everywhere. And I really believe it also applies to the data. And I think really one of the mistakes that sometimes we often make is the desire of bringing the 100% of their data during the data building process, right? How would you advise one when it comes to data usage and data building then?
You're right. So this thing that I'm not a big fan of, this phrase is single source of truth. So when people say single source of truth, you need a single source of truth, but the way the people do it is what I don't people try to do that by bringing all the data into one database or one data lake. That's not what single source of truth is. When people can look at it and when they see it, they only see one number and everyone aligns this is the right number. And so what we do is we decouple the source of truth from the data layer to the information layer. So the information layer or the reporting layer is where if people can only access reports from only one place, they don't have a Google Analytics and a CRM dashboard and a Tableau dashboard and a Power BI dashboard. And they have 5 dashboards, they'll have 5 metrics. So if you solve that problem on how people get that metric, there's only one place to go get information and then abstract out everything on the back. If you solve that problem, you're solving for 2 solutions. One is the end user feels less confused because she can find information she needs in one place. And 2, it's easy for you to then validate that one metric against, say, a financial benchmark or your finance teams or your risk teams who can then say, yep, this is the right number. We certify this number. And so that's only one certified number. So if you do that, then you don't have to worry about bringing 100% of data into one place. You can just work with different data being in different places. You can tie it all up at the reporting layer or at the information layer. And so that is the approach we've taken in the past and we're taking even today. We have multiple systems, multiple databases, but we're not trying to integrate them. We're trying to solve it at the highest level, which is the reporting layer level.
One thing that I pick up from the conversation that happened over the last 20 minutes at least, and I really love this, is your way of thinking. And I think you use the word of working backward. I really, really love that because I think that often many mistakes that data analytics teams make is that we got this great idea. We got this great model, or we got all this data. Let's bring it in. Let's bring the model. Let's build the thing, and then try to sell it, or at least try to bring it to the business and try to get everyone to like it. Whereas your working backward approach is talking to the business, understand what the problem is, understand what exactly they are trying to solve, and then subsequently work backward to say what data we bring in, how exactly we are solving this problem, how are we going to build analytics for it. So the question that I have for you in that working backward way of thinking is, in your experience, how can we encourage the data analytics team to be more thinking in this way rather than build it first and people will buy?
The way I tell my teams, and I've typically, so there are two schools of thought, right? When people say we should have the best technology and the best bleeding edge of technology, and then, so I tell them there are 2 ways to think about it, right? I'm not saying one is right or the other is wrong, but there are 2 kinds of doctors. One is a doctor, if you go to her and say, I have a headache, she'll say, what is happening? Why do you have a headache? Why do you have a stomach ache? What can I do for you? And treat you. That's the doctor you want to go to when you have a headache, stomach ache, or a heart. But if you want to develop a vaccine for coronavirus, you go to a different doctor who sits in a lab, builds the coronavirus vaccine and all of that stuff. You need those doctors sometimes, yes, but you don't always need those doctors. More often than not, 90% of the time, 95%, you just need a doctor who can cure you right now. You have a problem, and then you'll go back to them. So I think of myself and the teams that I run as the teams that are helping people alleviate their problems. We're just alleviating a headache that they have because they're losing customers, they're losing volume, they're losing sales, and I'm curing their headache with data. So if you think like that, you're going to think backwards. But if you're going to say, no, I'm going to build a vaccine, I don't care what problem you have, it'll cure everything. I'll just build a vaccine if you have headache, stomach ache, heartache, whatever it is, just use that vaccine. That's not going to work because maybe it will cure it, maybe it won't, or maybe it's just not even what they want. And so they have to wait 10 months with a headache and they can't solve their problem. That's not what you want, right? So thinking about what kind of a person you are, that makes a lot of difference.
That's a nice one. Now let's moving back to this the conversation and this podcast interview. I want to congratulate you and the team for the launch of Latitude Pay. Now, given there is no public playbook from the market to follow, and without revealing any trade secret, what was the mandate for your team to develop the data and analytic capabilities for a new and different product?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, without giving away too much, I think the biggest focus for us was to make sure that we had a really good customer experience. And like you were alluding to in the past, because it's a purely digital first product, we have the capability to make sure that the customer onboarding experience, customer lifecycle experience, and also the way customers' decision-making experience is all seamless. So that was the mandate that was given to us, is make sure we can make everything happen near real time for customers, be it through personalization, be it through better decisioning, be it through better servicing. That's what we've been focusing on. And so the reason we've been doing that is because we know we'll pretty much bring all our other businesses, other products to this world. And when we do bring them, we know that there is a known way of how to solve for these problems. So we're not building something just for one aspect of the business and then we can reuse it. So that's what we've been trying to do.
Right. Now, from the risk management perspective, does it require new ways of thinking to collect the data and calculate the credit scoring?
Yes, and I think with the growing regulatory mandate and growing regulatory framework, especially with breach reporting and a few other, for the new thing that's coming up with comprehensive credit reporting with financial hardship and stuff, regulators have been demanding more and more data, and the regulators have become better with knowing what data to ask for. So previously it used to be once in a while they would ask for some data, you could package something up and give it to them. But now they want to know everything and they're very clear on what they want to know. So it's important for financial institutions to pick up the game on what we collect, where it is stored, understanding where it is. And so the moment you get that requirement, you can immediately ship it away and not have to spend more time. Because right now what happens is people drop everything they do, they go looking for that data, try to find it and then give it to a regulator. We should get to a stage where regulators are becoming smarter and smarter with data because they know what exactly can be asked. So it just is important for us also to pick up the game.
Now, compared to credit card, BNPL or buy now, pay later is still relatively new. So I suppose the data collected and historical understanding are still limited. My question for you then is, what is your advice to the data scientists working on new products? Not necessarily the BNPL, but the general advice to working on a new product. What should they do to avoid data bias?
So luckily, we don't work on a product in isolation. Although we are building a technology for a product, we validate it on one of the older products to make sure that anything that we recommend for a customer for a particular product, if we did the same with an older data set or an older product in mind, it would still work. And so that kind of validation and anchoring is something we do a lot. So for example, we build a personalization algorithm. Instead of saying this is the only algorithm for this product, we try to reuse that personalization algorithm for an existing older product and see how that customer would react if she got the same set of recommendations. And if we say, yep, that makes sense, then we go and use it. So our validation happens on a lookalike product or a similar product for a similar set of customers. And then we put it into production for the newer set of customers, newer products.
Final question, personalization versus data ethics. Can they coexist or what's the balancing act to achieve both?
I think it is very important for them. So it's not an either or, they should both exist, because what happens is when you don't have a conversation on personalization, just in the name of data ethics and not give any data, you are losing out on a really good experience that you can get. The customers lose out on an experience, the businesses lose out on an experience. Nobody wins there. But when you go all out and then not worry about data, then obviously so the balance there is informing the customers about what we are doing with their data. So better ways to tell the customers, hey, I'm collecting this information about you, and this is what I'll do with you. So all that you're doing on the website, I will send you better emails. I will make sure that I'll send you better app notifications. I'll make sure that I'll send you better offers. Are you happy with that? And so customers like, yes, exactly what I want. If I collect your date of birth and this is what I'll do with it. I'll make sure that I use it for your credit decisioning. People can make an informed decision then to say, yep, I agree, I don't agree, I don't want to do anything. I want to live without that. But that's not happening. So what we need is for businesses to educate customers on what we're doing with their data and why we're doing that with it. And then I think people probably can then make an informed consent on what they want to do with it.
The data privacy is increasingly more important than ever. And also the regulators are really stepping in to protect the consumer. Apart from those education to the consumer of how they are using the data, what would be your advice in terms of the cybersecurity on this end about within the organization that the business leader can do to protect the data?
For example, in Australia, the Australian privacy principles may mandate that you cannot store any identifiable customer information. It all has to be de-identified. So there are already enough compliance rules and regulation more to make sure that you can't misuse that data. So that's already happening. So the decision that's being made is not identified to a person, but identified to her traits. Her traits could be, she likes to shop more on fashion. She likes to do this. She likes to do that. And so you're building features on her behavior rather than who she is. And nobody should be able to misuse it by looking up their email ID and finding out who they are. So even when we persist data retention and compliance is a really big task for us. So we've been on a massive journey to do data de-identification. And so once that is done, the risk of any breach still won't affect it because it'll just be blobs of data. It won't make any sense and nobody can misuse it. But at the same time, it can be useful for a personalization experience because we can then tie it back to a customer ID or whatever it is that we want to do. So that's what we're trying to do.
Love it. Now, this almost brings us to the end of the podcast interview. My final, second last question for you is, what is your most important first principle?
I think we spoke about this quite a bit, right? So I'm not sure if you've heard of Hanlon's razor.
No, I have not.
So Hanlon's razor is a rule of thumb or a principle that says never attribute anything to malice, which can be adequately explained by stupidity. So don't think people are doing it intentionally wrong. Don't think that people are not using it because they don't want to. It's just because what you've built is not good enough. And so it's very applicable to the data world because a lot of times we build stuff and people say, oh, they're just not smart enough. They can't use it. It's not that they are not smart enough or they don't want to use the technology. It's just the tools are not useful for them. So if you change that thinking and then say, maybe I've not explained this the right way. Maybe I've not sold segmentation to them the right way. Maybe I've not done whatever I've done the right way. Let me try it differently and then still see what they want to do. And so if you apply that principle, more often than not, you'll see adoption rather than people saying, nope, I don't want to do it.
I need to look up that one. It's the first time I hear of that. What is one book that you have read and thought it would have been better for your younger self to have?
I'm not sure if you've read the book called Why We Sleep. So it's a book called Why We Sleep. So that book is all about why you should sleep. It's a book by Matthew Walker. So if you look up Why We Sleep, it talks about why everyone needs 8 hours of sleep, what happens if you lose 8 hours of sleep, and how it's important for your mental and physical well-being. And after reading that book, I've read so many books, but you don't read in anything. That's one book that's changed my life. And I wish I read it much sooner because I used to live a life of 4 hours of sleep is good enough. That's what everyone does. That's not good enough. It's something everyone needs to do. Sleep 8 hours at least and make sure you're taking care of yourself because it's as important as eating and exercise. So how do you do that? I wish I had read that book much sooner or it had come out much earlier.
I can relate to it. I think personal looking after ourselves is so important before we can do any creative things. Now, Kshira, this interview is flying so fast when the conversation is flowing. Thank you so much again for this podcast interview and sharing with us some of your experience in building a CDO team and also many of those gold nuggets.
Thank you so much. And thanks for having me, Jason. And thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Pleasure is mine.